Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session of the NEMA Learning Lab series. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Adam Lucas of Guidehouse to begin today's event. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you today. Thanks for joining us for our session. We're excited to talk with you about how behavioral science can help drive communications related to mitigation and resilience. Guidehouse is a worldwide consulting firm and a thought leader around resilience and emergency management, and has strategically partnered with behavioral science researchers to develop solutions to some of the toughest challenges. Our history includes supporting the resilience of our nation at the national, state, and local levels. We've supported the recovery of recent major disasters, including post-disaster recovery support at the state and local level for our nation's most devastating disasters, including COVID-19. We've also supported key recovery projects in the aftermath of Joplin tornado in 2011, after Hurricane Harvey in 2017, and following Superstorm Sandy. Before we dive into today's session, I'd like to introduce myself and allow my colleagues to introduce themselves. My name is Adam Lucas. I'm an associate director at Guidehouse, specifically within our national security segment, supporting our DHS FEMA clients, where I lead a variety of projects ranging from strategic communications, behavioral science-driven change management, training, development, and organizational design work. I lead our Guidehouse resilience research, where we think about how to design interventions that lead to awareness and action in all aspects as we think about resilience. So with that, Will, I would like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Will Leach. I am the CEO of the Mindstates Group. We're a behavioral research and communications consultancy, and we specialize in understanding non-conscious factors of human behavior and then using those insights to help our clients create compelling marketing. And so we like to think of ourselves as we bring psychology to you to help you compel people to listen, care, and act. Previous to working with the Mindstates Group, I was for about 20 years on client-side marketing research across biotech, energy, and at PepsiCo, where I ran behavioral sciences over at PepsiCo. In 2018, I wrote a book called Marketing to Mindstates, and it's a practical guide to understanding how behavioral design and behavioral sciences can be used to activate marketing and create compelling experiences. And out of that book, I'm now running learning labs for Texas A&M University as well as SMU University. And I collaborate with Guidehouse on how to drive resilience. Today, I'm going to be teaching you a little bit about a model, a way of thinking about human behavior, but more importantly, how to use behavioral sciences in a fun way to make your messaging more compelling, to make your experiences more compelling. Ultimately, when people have compelling experiences, people are more likely to act. And so I'm going to give you a couple of hints, a couple of pointers, and hopefully you'll learn a few things along the way. So with that, I will hand it over to Alex.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Colgan, and I work alongside Adam at Guidehouse, supporting our federal clients around training, communications, change management, and strategy solutions. I have a background in education and nonprofit leadership and a master's degree in public health. My culminating thesis is around community-driven risk reduction strategies that support ground-up, autonomous, and sustainable initiatives to respond to disasters. So I am excited to join you, and this is definitely a passion area for me. So I will look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, team. All right, let's dive in. So the objectives for today, the one question we're probably all considering right now is how can we possibly be asking people and communities to invest in preparedness and mitigation when we're operating in this continued pandemic. But today we'll discuss how the right behavioral science techniques can be used to help drive resilient actions in the COVID-19 environment, both at the individual and collective community level. So during the session, we'll specifically accomplish the following. First, we'll discuss the role of behavioral science in emergency management and disaster mitigation. Second, we'll introduce COVID-19 mind states to understand current emotional behavior. Third, we'll discuss communication methods for speaking to individuals' mind states to create that behavior change. And lastly, we'll practice developing communications that you can use to reach your stakeholders. So as we think about those objectives, how does that translate into our time together? So our time will be spent split primarily between a lecture and understanding from Will, specifically around the research and the model that we're going to be going over to drive this action. And then we'll spend the second half of our time together actually putting it into practice to give you a sense for how you could use this model to craft communication within your own spheres. So with that, I will pass it back to Alex.
Thank you, Adam. So before we jump in, I want for everyone to do me a favor. I want you all to type in the chat box the number of decisions you think you made yesterday. So take just a second, type in the number of decisions you think you made yesterday. At the grocery store, it might have been over the brand of butter you wanted to buy. At night, it might have been about that extra book your kiddo wanted to read. So how many decisions did you make yesterday? So in an average day, each of us makes 35,000 decisions. Let that sink in for just a minute. Do you remember even 20 of them? Behavioral science studies human behavior, specifically how humans really make decisions in the real world. Used across industries from retail to government, behavioral science allows us to understand why people make certain decisions and allows us to influence their future decision-making process. Behavioral science is not new. In fact, for the last 30 years, behavioral scientists have been discovering new ways to understand people's emotions and decisions. And over this time, it has come to encompass a collection of social sciences, including sociology, psychology, economics, public health, anthropology, and even political science. What is new is our understanding of how to apply these techniques in innovative ways to drive a specific action, especially in the public sector. So when we talk about those 35,000 decisions you make every day, we need to understand that the vast majority of those decisions happen at the subconscious level. So if most of our decision-making happens at a subconscious level, how do we learn to speak to the subconscious to ensure our critical messages about resilience and preparedness make it to the conscious level? I'm curious how many of you remember the signs that said, give them a break when you would enter into a construction zone on the highway or interstate. So give me a little hand in the Zoom if you can remember that. The give them a break signs would signal to drivers that they were entering into a construction zone and their speed needed to lower. These signs were replaced in the late 2000s with signs written in a child's handwriting, reading, slow down, my mommy works here, and slow down, my daddy works here. The idea centered around the belief that motorists didn't care about the welfare of an anonymous construction worker, but that they might care about his or her grieving child. In the first year of that campaign, there was a 30% reduction in work zone fatalities. So understanding human behavior helped mitigate against risk. In 2012, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention spent $54 million on anti-smoking campaigns. According to a report published in the Lancet Medical Journal in September 2013, the CDC's 2012 Tips from Former Smokers campaign motivated 1.6 million smokers to quit. More than 100,000 US smokers quit for good as a result of these campaigns. So we know that effective advertising inspires people to mitigate against risk. And finally, for one more example, the Thank You Ocean campaign was developed with 100 non-governmental agencies in California concerned about the ocean. The campaign asked people to share the things they love about the ocean and the benefit they enjoy from it, in hopes of reducing negative behaviors that harm or pollute the water. The thinking being, if you first think about the reasons you love the ocean, you will be less likely to take harmful actions. Each of these campaigns attempts to take things we know about human behavior to develop effective communication campaigns. Will is going to share about his behavioral science research and how we can apply that research to develop effective campaigns to drive risk awareness and behavior change. Will?
Thank you, Alex. I love those examples. I love the smoking one. I'm very familiar with that. The ocean one I wasn't familiar with, so I'm glad you brought that up. So hey guys, here's what I promise from you. I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that you do not want to earn a PhD in neuropsychology and that you're hoping that somebody can do that work for you. Well, I don't have that PhD, but I have done that work for you. And I'm going to talk to you first about a model. And this model is based on 4 different social sciences. I'm going to basically summarize about 65 years of cognitive psychology into this small, short, and easy to understand model. And this same model I use to get my kid to eat its vegetables. I use it when I'm using for employee engagement, and you can use it as it relates to your communication efforts, whether it's personal or professional. So I'm going to talk you through this model, but more importantly, after that, let's talk about what COVID did to everybody in every industry globally. So first off, if you want to understand why we do the things that we do, like whether it's for me to try to get my kid to eat its vegetables, or for me choosing what vacation spot I want to go to, or if somebody is going to buy some insurance, you have to understand 4 different social sciences. The first one is goal theory. And really all that is think about that as all of your customers, all of your constituents have goals. So think of it as a target for behaviors. If you don't understand somebody's goals, or if you don't message to somebody's goals, then they can get distracted very easily. Just like Alex said, 35,000 decisions, like 35,000 decisions are made every day. Distraction interrupts our processing of information all day long. So we have to be able to communicate to people's goals. An easy thing for you to know about is there are 2 types of goals. That's it. There are functional goals as well as higher order goals. Functional goals are those things that you could rattle off right now. If somebody asked you, what are you trying to accomplish today, right? You can say, well, I'm trying to get off this webinar. I'm trying to get through some emails. I'm trying to get off by 5, whatever. Those are things that are very simple for you to rattle off. We call those functional goals. The more important goals that everybody has, and these are the ones that drive people's attention as it relates to your communications, are what's called aspirational goals. Think of those as those people's wants, their aspirations in life. So when you message to somebody's aspirational goals, something that's a little more higher order, you're more likely to get them to notice your communications, but also pay attention and think about it, which is really important. So that's just basic goal theory, but it's really trying to understand the target for your communications and messaging to that target. Once I understand somebody's goals, the next thing I want to do is understand what motivates them to reach their goals. This is purely motivational psychology here. But basically, there are 9 core human motivations that drive the vast majority of human behavior. Things like security. So you may know from Maslow, this idea of at the bottom of the pyramid or the hierarchy of needs, right? There's this desire for security. Well, another one is empowerment, or it's a desire for control. That's a lot of work from Deci and Ryan. There's another one called autonomy. And if you're working in HR functions out there, you've probably learned that people desire freedom. And that's what keeps employees engaged and wanting to stay with your company or with your organization, right? So there are 9 of these core human motivations that drive our desires to actually take an action. So you need to communicate to these motivations, these feelings, these desires. Good news, there's only 9 of them. And I'm going to tell you about COVID and how those impacted those 9. But imagine that's fuel for goals. It's fuel for your constituents to go after their goals, because we all have goals. I have goals every January 1st. I wake up and I do my little list of my resolutions. And by February, I don't reach many of those goals. That's not because my goals are bad, guys. We all have fine goals. It's that I lacked motivation to continuously go after my goals. You need to provide that fuel, that engine that will get somebody to go after their goals. So once I understand what you want and understand why you want it, the next thing I want to do is lower friction. Because oftentimes when we're going after our goals, there's friction. We get distracted. Other goals pop up. Life is complex. That's why we have to understand people's approach. And that's something called regulatory fit theory. And again, it's super easy. I'm going to distill 30 years of research into one statement, basically. We go after our goals either to maximize gains or minimize losses. So you think of it as the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. We have these natural tendencies to go after our goals in one of those 2 ways. So if I can message, if I can frame up my organization or my marketing as a way of, I will either help you maximize your chances of reaching your goals, or I will help you minimize your chances of anything that could cause you to not reach your goals, minimize loss, minimize barriers, I'm more likely to feel intuitive to the person who's receiving my information. And those messages that are intuitive, that they just feel natural, are the ones that people constantly go back to. So it makes a lot of sense to craft your messaging using whether it's optimizing gains or minimizing losses. And the last part of the model is it's fine if I understand your goals. It's fine if I understand your motivations, and I can write in a way that will lower resistance to my messaging. But at the end of the day, lots of times we get people to engage with our marketing, to engage with our promise, and then they walk away. They don't take action. That's why behavioral economics is so important, this fourth part of the model. And this is where we have these cognitive heuristics. Just think of them as shortcuts to decision making. Like Alex said, you're making 35,000 decisions. You're not doing cost benefit analyses on every one of those decisions. You couldn't, because if you tried to do that, you wouldn't get out of bed. It'd be too complex. It'd be too much work. So what do? You have these shortcuts, these heuristics, and behavioral economics studies these heuristics. So one of the classic ones here that I'll talk about to my students is scarcity effect. And this is this heuristic or this shortcut that we tend to assign greater value to things that we believe are scarce in nature. So the toilet paper run of 2020, in part, was created from a desire or a fear of scarcity. Like, if you have toilet paper, I don't have toilet paper, I better go get toilet paper. Same thing with gas runs. Another one is social proof. And social proof is that we tend to assign value to things that we believe other people are doing, especially if those people are in a position of authority. So there's a couple of these heuristics or these shortcuts that people use to make decisions. It's really important to use some of these shortcuts in your communications, whether it's on your website or onto a newsletter or something, because that moves somebody from moving to wanting to act to acting. So you may find that, hey, this is really interesting. So what do I do with this? Because it's okay to understand your customers or your constituents' goals or their motivations, or how do they approach their decision making. Here's why this is important. Because if I understand people's goals, if I understand what motivates them, I understand how to lower their psychological resistance to messaging, and I can create a shortcut to decision making, I can actually create a mind state. And when I message to a mind state, you are going to have much more effective communications and experiences. Why? Because these subconscious mind states create emotional arousal or a hot state. And when you're in a hot state, you're more susceptible to persuasion. We are all in these hot states throughout the day. So you're at a moment in time when you just kind of, you're working really hard, or you're looking at a menu, or you're driving, and you kind of lose time. Or the classic one I use is when you go to Vegas. Some of you guys, when you go to Vegas and like time just kind of ends for a while, and you may be on a run or maybe a loss. These moments in time where everything just feels like it's working and you're intuitive, maybe you're on a run and you get the runner's high, you're actually in a hot state. And we can actually create hot states that are not natural. You can actually create those with messaging. Great marketing creates hot states. It creates the emotional arousal. So I talk about this as it's the science behind compelling communications. Like when you have agencies that you're working with, or you hear people saying, we got to get more emotional with our advertising, realize there's science behind it. It's behavioral science. It's not something that somebody can just kind of come up with. There are principles and rules to creating these hot states. Now, mind state communications are significantly more effective at driving human behavior because it engages that system on that heart, that emotional non-conscious, but it also integrates into the consciousness, your considered state, the mind. We all have budgets. We have time constraints. We have space constraints. There's all sorts of constraints that we have that are very conscious and very practical that we have to message against. So mind state marketing allows you to do both. Now, a mind state is not a segmentation. It's not a personality profile. It's not a personality test. It's not Myers-Briggs or anything else. What these things are, these mind states, and you're going through different mind states over the course of any given day, any given week, they overlay on top of what you already know. So if you already have a lot of research or you intuitively know your constituents, understand that this will just tell you a little bit more as you overlay this information on top of what you already know to understand in the moment when they're considering resilience, what's going to drive them? What are their values going to be like? How are their beliefs going to change? How are the behaviors likely to change? What are their attitudes and preferences in that moment? And when I can message those things, again, my messaging will just feel more intuitively. And lastly, because you're kind of like, hey, I don't want to read this book, or I'm not trying to get a PhD in neuropsychology. You don't have to, because all the work has been done for you in academia. Each one of these mind states has unique messaging blueprints that will outline messaging strategies and detailed tactics that you need to psychologically optimize your communications. You can learn about those in the book, Marketing to Mind States, or just actually go to the literature reviews and start reading how so many people across the world are using messages that have been tailored to mind states to create this emotional arousal. And again, when people have high emotional arousal, you're more susceptible to persuasion. So I've been doing this work here for the better part of the last decade, specifically to mind states. And I have a tracking study for my company at the Mind State Group. And I work with many different organizations. I'm in pharmaceutical, I'm in financial services, I'm in entertainment, retail, large brands. And so I'm constantly going out globally to measure people's goals. And it's something that I've been doing for a number of years. And last March, almost a year ago, it's a little more than a year ago, everything changed. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. For me, and in my tracker, when I'm studying, I'm asking people everywhere, what are your goals? And it was across many different industries, right? It wasn't just like your goals in life. I don't care about that. What I do care about are the goals that people have for my clients' businesses or what they want to sell. So I was looking at all these different categories, and in almost one night, everything changed on this tracker. And that was the night, at least for us here in the United States, was when President Trump took the national, he went on national TV and said he was going to restrict airline travel from Europe over to the States. And I remember my jaw dropped, literally dropped. I thought, this is going to ruin basically all my tracking studies, because all of a sudden it was something that was broader than anything that any of my clients cared about in terms of, you know, they're trying to sell more of their products and services. And all of a sudden there was this huge amount of fear in the marketplace. So the next morning I'm sitting here running interviews, and for the next week I'm looking at interviews globally. And here's what we found. Collectively, because of COVID-19, we saw that regardless of industry you're in, or regardless of what demographics you have, in almost all cases, there were 3 spikes in overall people's goals at a human level across all products, across all decisions. The first thing was people immediately needed to feel safe, because that was the point where I think most people, at least in the United States, felt that this was real. That, wow, this isn't just a cold, this isn't just a bad flu bug, something is bad enough to stop travel. This is something we have to take seriously. Now, remember, this safety also was not just physical safety, but also psychological safety. And it's still happening today. There's still people out there that are just, they want to feel safer. And it could be economic safety, it could be national security, it can be racial security, but people just want to feel safer, because right now the world is really complex and there's a lot of drama that's causing people to feel like they're physically or mentally not safe. The second overall goal we saw was our desire for increasing of control, because, and this is still playing out month after month, people don't feel like they're in control of their lives, or at a minimum, they're just trying to not lose any more control. And imagine that, again, look at your own experiences. I used to have office space, and by May, I had to give up office space because it didn't make any more sense. I couldn't bring people into the office, right? So now all of a sudden, my home became office space. It became my son's school. It became our favorite restaurant. It became our place of worship. It became our entertainment place, right? We started watching movies, and it still was our home where we're kind of trying to raise a family. When people are taking so much control away from you, and all of a sudden people weren't sure if they're going to have a job, they weren't sure if they were safe, they lacked control. So we started seeing desires for control heavily increasing. And lastly, there's this need for release, because every day, guys, it's a struggle. Every day is a struggle for many, many different people, whether it's economic struggle, if it's social struggles, if it's just family struggles. And so what's happened was people, like, they'd watch the news and they would see all these bad things, you know, the economy is collapsing, people are dying. And so what people just wanted a release, even if it was just for a momentary, like a short pause, you know, 30 minutes or something. That's why entertainment properties went so high. I mean, certainly we were all watching TV more often, but actually, if you look at a lot of the the entertainment information, people looking for escape. So a release, whether it's wine, spirits, I'm sure cannabis sales have been skyrocketing, but also entertainment properties, because people just need moments of release because the world is very, very stressful. So right now, we know collectively people desire greater safety, greater control, and greater release across all industries. Now, these desires or these goals map back directly to subconscious mind states that I was talking about in my book, Marketing to Mind States. And they go to this one is called cautious security. And that is one mind state that's been spiking, and it's still very prevalent across all studies that we do. And cautious security is somebody who desires to not lose any more safety. So they are in that risk adverse kind of approach. Remember about that we talked about the third part of the model? They don't want to lose any more safety, right? They want to just basically, it's not that they want to get safer. They're trying to eliminate risks in their life, whether again, it's, risks to their children, risks to their budget, risks to anything. Second one is cautious empowerment. These people were focused mainly on, or this mindset is focused mainly on not losing any more control. Now we're starting to see that change a bit where people are seeking more control, especially during the elections, where people were desiring, maybe through their voting, they're able to gain more control over their work or over their lives. But basically people are just hoping that they can maintain what level of control they have in their lives. And then thirdly is optimistic engagement, where this is just simply, they want more moments of release or relaxation. So those are 3 mind states out of 18 possible that we know. If you knew nothing more about your customer, when clients come to me and they say, Will, we have no time to do research, what do we message against? I'm telling them these 3, regardless of who they are, regardless of kind of their category. These are the 3 that come up again and again as things that I want you to start focusing on. How do you provide a feeling that you're going to keep people secure, you're going to give them more control, or at least eliminate things that will take control from them, and how are you giving them more moments of release or relaxation, that breath that so many people at the end of the day need just to get through that day. So you may be asking now, what do I do with this information? The first thing I want you to do, and whatever it is that you're offering, whatever it is that you're trying to get people to do, whatever behavior that is, first start thinking about what are my constituents' aspirational goals? Because you need to start messaging to people's aspirations. Remember why? Because the world's so complex. We can't keep focused. It's a very distractible world. The way to keep people focused is to remind them that you can help them reach their aspirations. So inside, I tell this to my students, I do a lot of lectures on this. Every one of your constituents has kind of an idealized self, a hero that's inside of them, that when they deep down think of themselves, that they aspire to be something greater than themselves. The perfect mom, the greatest entrepreneur, the perfect coach football dad, or whatever, right? We have these aspirational goals, and your constituents also have aspirational goals as it relates to whatever it is you're trying to get them to do. So if it's for resilience, or if it's something around protecting of the family, realize in their heads, they are envisioning on that day when they really need to be that hero, that they will step up to the plate and they will do it. So you need to activate on that specific aspirational goal. Now you may be thinking of yourself, well, what goal? I haven't done any of this research. Good news. My tracking study has done that for you. I've already told you what those goals are. Those goals are, how can we help the public feel safer, more in control, or if you can get away with this, I don't know if you can, how can you tell them that you will give them that moment of, I can relax. It's one thing I don't have to think about. So now how you articulate that is up to you and up to your agencies or whoever it is that's doing your messaging. But ultimately, you should be looking at your messaging now through this lens of, am I reassuring my constituents and the public that I'm giving them more control, greater safety, or that they can relax a little bit? And if you do that, you're much more likely to break through that clutter. Alex said before that, we have these 35,000 decisions. The number one decision you all make every single day is to not decide. You do it all the time. Why? Because it's too complex to make decisions. So what happens is you have a filter. You have a psychological filter that's eliminating the vast majority of communications so that you can kind of, you have resources available to you to make good decisions. If you message these goals, you're much more likely to get through that very first part of that filter that's eliminating the vast majority of your messaging to your constituents. So activate on people's aspirational goals. And when I mean activate, I mean show people, you use copy, show people that, reconfirm to them that they can be a hero. They can reach their aspirationals. they have made their family safer, more in control, or they've given their family or themselves a moment of release. Show those moments and your mind will naturally gravitate to those moments. It'll naturally keep reading any kind of copy because you're tapping into that very first part of that model, people's aspirational goals. Okay. Now, remember, we all said we have aspirational goals, but how do we create that fuel? What's that fuel? That right there is the motivational side of things. And the way you do that is first you have to identify, remember those 3 motivations or those desires. I want to feel more secure. I want to have more control, or I want to have more moments of release. So step 1 is really don't overthink this, guys, but take a moment to say, what core desire can I really rightfully own? Right? So what can I really provide? Can you give your constituents, your public, more safety, security, and maybe kind of protection from threat? Probably. That's probably something you deal with. That feels pretty natural. Also, can you also provide moments of control? It's possible. I think you probably could. Can you also give kind of the public a moment of kind of release and that they feel assured that they're covered? I would say that yes, you probably can. And with just a little bit of a stretch of thinking, you can tap into these with your communications. And again, you create that fuel, that emotional fuel to get them to continue reading and to engage with your experiences or with your communications. So first, which one of these 3 can you rightfully provide? Can you rightfully own without it feeling like you're trying to sell something or that you're trying to be something that you're not? So I tried to do this myself. I am no expert in what you're doing, but I thought to myself, you have to integrate these ideas into your communications. It's very simple. If I can activate on somebody's aspirations, and then I can tell you that, hey, if by me making you safer, or by me giving you more control, or for me giving you more release, you're more likely to reach your aspirations of having a family that, those aspirations, a family that is not highly impacted from a disaster. I know that's really bad aspiration, guys, much better copy out there, but that's probably the space you're going to be in. A family that's in control, a family that's safe. So I looked at this, I say, okay, ready for an emergency? You can be. And then what if this was my message? What if this is kind of the aspirational goal? Are you ready for an emergency? You can be. How can I create that that emotional fuel? Well, I just kind of created some ideas, right? So let's say if you leaned in on security and you said, you know what, I really feel like security, this desire for safety fits best with my organization. Well, now you could say something like, hey, rest assured knowing that you are covered when natural disasters inevitably hit, right? Inevitably, these things happen. Are you safe? Did you protect your family? That whole feeling of protection and security can create that emotional arousal by questioning their ability to keep their family or their home or whatever safe. You can actually create that emotional fuel. But I could take that same exact messaging and kind of frame it up around empowerment or this desire for control. In this case, I wrote something, hey, don't lose control when disaster strikes. We have every option you need to handle whatever comes your way. So just something like that, if somebody reads this and somebody who desires greater control, this is going to resonate more with them at a subconscious level because they desire greater control. So, hey, they don't want to lose any more control. You're telling them don't lose control when a disaster strikes. Or thirdly, the engagement thing. And the engagement side, I know it works with spirits and it works with entertainment properties. It works in scented candles, other categories I work with. But what about this? I said, well, with our programs, you can relax knowing we'll handle the work for you if disaster ever happens. So again, somebody who is driven right now by engagement in life, he or she needs a moment of kind of relaxation and release every day. And if you just happen to be messaging in that moment where she's really just desiring that engagement or that release, this message is going to communicate to her in a way that's going to feel emotionally compelling. And then all we need to do is get her to keep reading your materials, to keep engaging until you can sell your product, your service, your program to get them to take an action. So that's step 2. First step is just which one of these 3 do you want to own, or where do you feel like you can own? Step 2, integrate that in communication and just be open, because you can take liberties. It doesn't have to make perfect logical sense because you're not speaking to the logical mind. You're speaking to people's hearts. So be kind of open to new territories of communication, new ways of communicating, because that will make you feel more intuitive to your constituents. Next, prime that motivational need. So how can you provide that emotional fuel to take action? How can you do that? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of ideas here. So let's say, for instance, you said, you know what, I want to lean in on security. And guys, I want you to take a look at this one, because I'm going to ask you these next 3 slides in our activity to think about these slides a bit, and how would you bring it to life for your public, for the people that you serve. So if you're going to lean in on security, use these bullet points, kind of write them down, if you will. Write a couple of ideas down, because I'm going to ask you how you could do this in the activity. So if you want to push into the security motivation, how can you help people protect themselves and their possessions from loss or misuse? Do you have products? Do you have services? Do you have programs that will protect them or their assets? If you do, you should be talking about that, because that's what they desire. In those words, they want to be protected. They're going to also want to know that you have strong expertise and experience. So this doesn't play so well if you're a brand new organization or you don't have a lot of expertise in an area, because people who desire safety want to know that you've been around for many, many years and you have experts that are constantly day in and day out working to provide security. So you need to help people realize that you have tried and true solutions with concrete reasons and examples of losses being avoided by working with you, by signing up for your program. So I tell some of my innovative clients, in software, this is not the type of mind state where you talk about how new you are and how breakthrough you are. Because when people want security, they don't want new things that haven't been tried and true. They're not tested. They want you to tell them that you've been working on this for a long time and your solutions have been proven again and again and again to provide safety. They're also going to want to understand that processes and structure were used. So these are like small copy points for your agencies to take back. But when people are told that there are processes, there are structures, or something was designed, using the word design makes somebody feel as if there's science behind what you've been doing, that there's a clarity in thinking, and that there's structure behind what you're thinking, or your service or program. So using those types of words will make somebody feel as if they, in fact, or that you in fact have done your homework, that you've been working on this for a while. And the last thing you can do is they want to see collaboration with others. So if somebody desires security, they're hoping that you are working with others and collectively you're using the best minds in the industry to come up with a solution that is going to protect them. So showing collaboration with others, especially if those people are in a position of authority. So you don't have to prove out the authority, by the way, guys. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to sit there and show all the credentials. It's good if you have them. But this is the time where you want to start signing your emails, Senior Vice President of Operations or Director of Safety. Those monikers, right? Like Senior Vice President, Director, those words have authority placed on them. It's all the subconscious. But when somebody has Director in front of their title, it provides a sense of confidence that this person has authority. They know what they're doing. So sign your emails with the position and the titles could create this sense of security, or that they feel safer that you're on the job. Or if you have endorsements of any kind, now's the time to when you pull them out and you show those endorsements, regardless of where those endorsements come from, within reason. Show those endorsements. And if they're from credible agencies, even better. I mean, there's a reason why we say federal, state, and local authorities. From a psychological perspective, regardless of whether you think your government's doing well or not, when you show that federal, state, and local authorities are acting together, it creates a sense of assuredness. There's a sense of these people are working together. They're in a position of authority. They're helping me to mitigate threat. So there's just some examples. So if you're leaning in, kind of thinking, you know what, I think I could lean in on the security, take a second or two, write down a couple of these bullets. I'll bring it back up if you want to, because I'm going to ask you, how could you do this in a piece of marketing? How could you show that you have strong experience and expertise? How could you show that you're collaborating with others? Because you're going to brainstorm some ideas to help show your reader that, yes, you can help protect them. And remember, it's not just physical threat. It's not just that you can protect from COVID. It is emotional threat. It's financial threat. It's social threat. all these things are within reason to have somebody feel like, yes, you're a safer choice. I'll keep reading your communications. So that's the first one, security. You may also be thinking, you know what? I like this control idea. That resonates with me. So if this resonates with you and you want to lean in a little bit more in control, that you provide, this feeling that you're authorized and equipped to act, or help other people feel that they're authorized and they're equipped to act, I want you to pay attention to this. So somebody who desires control, or they're driven by the empowerment motivation, they want to avoid restrictions. So you need to show them that you're going to help them avoid restrictions, anything that they could do to eliminate their ability to act as they want, right? So lower restrictions as much as possible. Tell them that you're going to give them more choices. So the whole point, when there's a lack of choices, or if there's friction when they're interacting with you, you're not giving your customers or your public control, and that's what they want. So to give somebody control, you have to take away things that restrict their control. And this can be as simple as when sometimes when you're collecting information, we tend to, hey, we've got them online. Let's collect as much information as possible to get so we can contact them. And we think it's very reasonable, but realize that every one of those places where you ask somebody's first name, middle initial, last name, city, street names, state, zip code, other things, every point is a point of friction. And every time you do that, you take control away from your constituent. So you have to figure out a way to have them easily go collect a little bit of information up front, and then use other places in your experience to collect even more information. Help them also control important aspects of their experience with you. So if there's any way that you can create a program or an experience with your website or whatever it is, where you can have them control a part of that experience, that's going to be important, because they will associate you with control. So I tell my clients things like, give them variables that they can play with, give them choices. It's almost like choose your own adventure books. Give them the ability to choose their own adventure. And if you do that, you will get them to feel like, yes, this company or this organization gives me greater control. And that's what I desire. I want greater control so I can reach my aspirational goals. Therefore, if you can offer choices, kind of like a choose your own adventure book, do that. But there's a limit. So if you give somebody one program, you're not giving anybody any control. You're giving them basically a mandate. Secondly, if you give like maybe two choices, well, you're not really giving choices. You're giving them a decision to make. It's either A or B, but that's it. The magic number is basically 3 or 4. From neuropsychology, when you give people 3 options of anything, they feel like they're in control. 4 is pretty good as well. If you gave people 4 different levels of programs or whatever it is that you're offering, they feel like they have to navigate choices, and they have the ability to make the choice that's best for them. Again, giving them control. However, when you go past 4, when you go to 5 or more choices, there's this concept called ego depletion or cognitive depletion, but basically you have choice overload, and people can't compare. It's very difficult for people to compare multiple choices outside of 4. Even if you're super clear, I know you have UX designers out there that say, no, we're incredibly clear. I'm telling you from a neuropsychology perspective that there's a point after 4 that all of a sudden engagement drops dramatically, because people can't differentiate the nuances between option 4 and 5 and 6 and 10. So that's why it's really important to stick with 3, maybe 4. Don't go over 4. Just do yourself a favor. Next thing you can do is, when you're naming those choices, increasing levels of service will also give them a feeling of control. So we tend to see these things as like, you can buy the bronze package or the silver package or the gold package, or you can sign up for the personal package, the partner package, and the professional package. Each one of those systems, or those 3 words, provide one, a choice, which is what we've been talking about, but also it provides a higher level of service. And by showing that the higher level, whether it's bronze, silver to gold, there's a value that's associated with that higher level, again, providing greater control to your public. So when you're going to name something, whatever that is, name those where they gravitate. Even if it's like, we used to use grades, right? A, B, C, D, F, whatever that is, show each one of these naming as these names, whether it's A, B, C, D, F, bronze, silver, gold, whatever it is, show that there's an increased level of service, and that will provide people with feelings of control. And the last thing to do is don't surprise people who want control. So, if you surprise somebody who thinks that you're going to give them greater control, you've taken control away from them. but we all know life happens. So what I want you to do is, if you're not going to reach a certain deadline, if there's something that you thought was going to be ready and it's not ready, and you know that your customers, your public wants control, you must give them extra notice, because the shorter it is to that moment where their expectations were not met, you took control away from them. They can't mitigate or change their plan. So what do you have to do? You have to give them extra notice, and they'll give you that kind of leeway if you give them the choice of the solution. So I tell some of my agency clients, there's times when they thought they're going to have something done by Friday and they need the extra weekend to get it done. And they're going to send it out on Monday. What I tell them to do is I say, not only should you be telling your client a week in advance, hey, we may not make this Friday deliverable. Let them know, but also don't just say, you know what, since we missed our deadline, we're going to give you 10% off. That's not providing a choice for your customer or the public, right? That's telling them that you're going to give them some money off. Let your customer, let your public create or let them choose the final solution. So maybe it's like, okay, you're not going to meet the deadline, but rather than 10% off, I want access to another program, whatever. But try to give the final solution, the solve to your constituents, to the people that you serve. So if you do these things and just brainstorm different ways of how you're going to create this experience, whatever it is that you're offering, this will create this sense of, yes, this program, this company, this government program is giving me greater control. So that's how you would kind of activate on the empowerment mind state. Then lastly, let's say you're going to take a leap and you're like, Will, I want to go to engagement. I think I best fit in something that's saying I can help you feel relaxed knowing that I'm on the job. That is somebody who desires engagement, to feel captivated, excited, or fully absorbed in an activity. So again, like I said, we see these moments in spirits, in wine, in entertainment properties, games, things like that, where people just need a release. So what you want to do, if you want to step into this space, and it's a really powerful space, everybody, it's a very, very powerful space, because so many people are talking about greater levels of security and control. I'm not the only one who picked up on these things, on these mind states. Fewer people are tapping into engagement, this desire for release. So it's something that could differentiate you. But to do that, people are kind of stuck in their homes right now, and they're going to be stuck for a while. So how can you make their home their personal sanctuary? So whatever it is that you can do to help them make their home the safe kind of vacation, the safe sanctuary that they're looking for. Because right now, people's homes are the places where we don't have to wear masks. People's homes are the places where we have the most security. We are trying to take the news away from our homes. So people are really using their homes as a sanctuary. So how can you do that? Anything you can do to communicate that we will help you maintain the sanctuary is going to be really engaging, or it's going to be really important to communicate. Also, is there any way that you can increase or maybe increase the number or the intensity of a tranquil, happy moment? Now, again, you may have to think, well, it's only going to happen in a moment of disaster. That's okay, because in that moment, that's when there's going to be a desire for tranquil and happy moment. So how can you make that happen if something happens, if a disaster happens, if something negative happens? How can you make sure that the intensity of that is lowered? That could be something you could communicate. Companies that are in this space, they're going to engage multiple senses to set a mood. So think experiences, even if it's the way that people are engaging with you, with your company, with your program online. How do you think about the entire experience as lowering stress? That's going to be really, really useful. And then lastly, or almost lastly, help them see their aspirational selves or their situation. Help them see what's possible. So I had a hotel chain call me a couple months ago, and they're saying people can't come to our hotels. This was relatively early. Much fewer people were flying or even able to fly. And this hotel chain had hotels all across the globe. And what they're doing is saying we don't have as many people, or we can't open up our spas. These are luxury hotels. Well, what do I do? What do I communicate? Help them see their aspirational future self and what's possible. Even if they can't use you right now, if you can show them that your company, that your program, that your organization will give them this moment of tranquility and happiness when the time is needed, that can be enough. So we started doing things like, hey, start doing virtual tours of your hotel. and let people actually go and book their hotel, book their spa services with you. They don't have to pay, but just that simple act of booking helps them envision their aspirational selves, that desired end state that they want to be at in the future. So let them do that. If you can let them do that, they will always remember you as a company that allowed them to see their aspirational self. And lastly, highlight how they will feel fully relaxed after taking the action. So you have to keep communicating that relaxation, that moment of like, yes, the stress is removed, that's going to happen if you take action. It's not enough to think about it. You have to take the action. When you take that action, you can now take this off your list. It's one less thing for you to worry about. We've got your back. So if you're thinking about maybe, kind of getting in this engagement space and thinking about promoting your service, your program in that space, that's going to be something that you want to take into consideration. So now, there are mind state personas and blueprints that you can get for greater depth. So if these are interesting to you in the future, if you're like, I want to think through my messaging through the lens of this cautious security mind state, or if I want to think it through the cautious empowerment mind state or the optimistic engagement mind state, you can contact Guidehouse directly. We can talk about how to get these things to you so that you can kind of start thinking more scientific about your messaging. So these things will add greater depth to your communication strategies and plans in the future. So that was 65 years of cognitive psychology and the last year and a couple of weeks of COVID. I've hit you with a lot of stuff, but I want you to try to apply this in some way. We wanted to make sure that you could find that you could walk out of this session immediately tweaking something that you're working on right now that will engage your public, engage your constituents, and to get them to take an action. And so we wanted you to do a little practice. So what we're going to ask you to do is take a moment and think about an emergency management or maybe a mitigation challenge that you have. And you've been working on, maybe you've been working on it for years. Maybe you just got this on your plate today. But I want you to kind of take a moment, take out a sheet of paper, something you can work on. And I want you to think about that emergency management or that challenge you have and your need to communicate to it. And who are you going to communicate with? So this is something that you're probably naturally doing. You've been doing this for a while now, but think about, choose that one issue, choose that one challenge, and do me a favor. Select one of those three mind states to communicate to. And I don't want you to overthink it. I want you to just kind of go intuitively, naturally, I think I should go towards security. Or naturally, I just feel like we should go towards this area of providing control. Or the last one, intuitively, naturally, it just feels like I should go towards engagement or promising that we're going to help you relax. Take this thing off your plate. You can get it off your plate so you can go and relax and think about other things. So step two on this whole process, and I'm going to give you time to do this, okay? But select the mind state to communicate to. And here are the mind states. It's the cautious security mind state, that cautious empowerment mind state, or the optimistic engagement mind state. I'll put these back up on the slide here in just a second. So you're going to think through your challenge. You're going to select one of these three mind states and start thinking about how would you use copy? How would you use images? What emotions are you going to try to evoke to get somebody to kind of take notice of your communication, of what program you're offering? Then with that, I want you to do me a favor. Don't put too much thought into this because I know you're not probably professional copywriters. You have other people doing that work for you, but think about a piece of messaging you have right now, or something that if you're going to engage your public saying, how can I bring this to life? Like if it was a community event, how would I bring greater control to life? Or how would I bring greater safety to life? Or how would I give a greater amount of engagement or relaxation to people? So I want you to think through on a sheet of paper and come up with an idea. Draft a message. Take messaging you already have and just tweak it to control security or engagement. Tweak it or come up with something yourself using that mind state that you've selected. And then lastly, as you come up with that idea, I just want you to determine, kind of take it one step farther and come up with, here's the type of image I would use, or here's kind of what's in my head of how I would bring this mind state to life. So what I want to do is give you guys basically about, let's do 10 to 12 minutes. And all I want you to do is based upon these 3 mind states, how would you draft a message or communication? How would you change what you currently are doing to take advantage of these mind states? Afterwards, after about 10 minutes, I'm going to actually ask for 1, 2, maybe 3 volunteers. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell everybody, kind of who you are, what you do. Tell us what you're thinking. And I'll kind of talk you through what I would maybe even change or even how to make it even better. And with that, then I will answer any questions you may have, or we can hand it over to Adam to end of the day. Do your best, guys. Don't take it too far. Don't try to craft the exact words. Other people can do that, but try to lean in, take advantage of these 3 mind states. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Okay, hopefully you guys are winding up. You're you are not overthinking it. You're just taking something that you've kind of used to using, and you're going to apply some of these ideas. And again, there's blueprints. If you want to look at these blueprints, we can work with you to make these more accessible. So here is the moment of truth, everybody. It is time to become inspired. I am not looking for you being perfect. I am looking for you to just making a step into one of these mind states. So that requires a volunteer. I promise you, I do this all the time. I promise you that I am not going to put you on the spot. I just want to hear about your idea and then give you a couple of ideas, hopefully on top of that, to make your communication even better. So is there anyone out there that would love to volunteer and just say, all I want you to do is, if you feel comfortable, tell us your name, tell us kind of what your role is, what you're working on. And again, just tell me that challenge. And then I went with this mind state, Will, and here's my overall idea. I can actually ask you to raise your hand. And with that, probably Adam, or if you may be able to find it, you may be able to unmute, or you guys may be able to unmute yourselves actually. But if you want to raise your hand, I would love a volunteer to get us started. All right. Ben.
We have someone in the chat. Yeah, Ben, it looks like.
I'm game. I love the aggressiveness of that, Ben. I appreciate it. So can you unmute yourself, Ben, and just kind of introduce yourself real quick?
Hello, I have done. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Good to have you here.
Great. Yeah, I'm really appreciating this webinar. Thank you. So my name is Ben Rose. I work for the state of Vermont in the Vermont Division of Emergency Management. And my day job is Recovery and Mitigation Section Chief. And for the last year or 5 years, I've been the COVID-19 Recovery Unit Leader. Yeah.
God bless you.
It's been a long year. So anyway, back to the day job. Hazard mitigation is a lot of syllables, and we try to deliver federal funding to basically buy down risk. And we're basically trying to market a program which is 75% federal share dollars, which means that communities that want to use that money have to come up with a match for the non-federal share. Mm-hmm. And so you're asking financially constrained rural communities to invest in buying down risk.
Yeah.
And so I looked at our website and I found the hazard mitigation program. And the first thing it does is it tries to explain what hazard mitigation is. And it says sustained action taken to, I can't read my own writing, to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and their property. Okay? Mm-hmm. Sustained action taken. So it's sort of a passive explanation of what hazard mitigation is. And so I tried to think about the safety frame and thought about a more active statement along the lines of federal funding is available to help local officials protect their communities from future natural disasters. So just trying to reframe it to what's in it for you as a local official who doesn't want to be to blame when something bad happens. I don't know. It's definitely a fruitful area to think about marketing the program in a more systematic way.
Yep. Hey, Ben, you brought up two ideas that I didn't even teach you, but you actually did on your own. So I thank you for that. The first thing I would tell anybody out there is no, and this is a fundamental truth, but nobody wants to be educated. Like, that's just not what we want. Very few people want to learn, particularly around hazard mitigation. What they do want to do, though, is protect their family, and they do want to protect their assets, and they do want to make sure they have more control, things like that. So whenever somebody says that the first thing they try to do is explain themselves, whatever it is they're offering, that brings up a red light for me. So the first thing when you're talking, I thought to myself that if that's the way you start off your website, you need something above that first that kind of creates this desire to learn, which could be, did you know that you're at risk for these negative things from happening? There is a solution. It's called hazard mitigation. And then you could describe that, because without that, then it's just telling the non-conscious brain basically that you're going to teach me about stuff that I don't have time really to know much about. And that's not what I was put on this earth to do. But actually, more importantly, Ben, what you said, which I didn't even talk about, but it's important to realize this for everybody who's out there. Your public is the hero in this story. And I love what you just said. You said, what's in it for them? They're the hero in this story. So if you're talking about yourself and the program and your program and all the things that you do, you're taking them outside of being the hero in their story and the way that they think about their lives. They're the hero who is trying to better their family, who is trying to eliminate risk, who's trying to gain more control. So when you took it from kind of this more passive to the active role, I love what you said. When you said, what's in it for them? Because when you do that, you make them the hero in their story. And nobody wants to read a story that's not about themselves. Okay, so if you're going to sell something, that was the exact right thing to do. So thank you very much for that. I think what you actually did was a very quick, easy thing you could do immediately to change that website and possibly get a little bit more engagement. So just imagine what you could do with, social media posts, things like that. But the two things that I loved about what you said was make your constituents, your public, the hero. And you have to somehow create that emotional desire to learn. If you're going to talk about your program, they have to first know that it's important for them to actually be educated on it. Make sense?
Thank you. Really, really helpful.
Great. No, thank you. That was great. You helped us all out, so I appreciate it. Can I get another volunteer out there? I know it's hard to follow up after my man Ben, but is there somebody else out there that has like an idea that they're thinking about, looked at their website, whatever? The awkward silence. Anybody?
Well, there was a question in the chat if you wanted to go to that while we wait for another volunteer.
Yeah,
Paul.
It's from Paul. Okay, so Paul's asking, what type of language should you use when marketing software? Ooh, I like this. To people to get them to use it and feel confident with it. Trying to reach the optimistic engagement state. Okay, Paul, you're gonna this is an interesting, there's two ways I'm thinking about going to this. And if you ever want to contact me directly, go to the mindstategroup.com or you'll see my contact information and I can speak directly to this. So remember in this presentation, we talked about 3 core mind states, which are driving many different actions. But you said something here which is interesting. You said, what type of language should you use when marketing software to get people for them to use it? So my behavior at this point is actually using software and to feel confident with it. So it sounds like the software will help them, in some way, but how do I get them to actually try something and actually use it? So that's another motivation that I did not teach you about, but it's in my book and I can speak to you specifically. But what that is oftentimes, let's see, I want to make sure I'm clear here. It's marketing them to get them to use it. It would be probably something in the space of, we call it competence, okay, Paul, and it's really a desire for mastery. So there's a motivation that I did not talk about, one of the 9, and it's called mastery or competence. And what that means psychologically, some people desire to feel highly capable by being qualified prepared, and skilled in an activity. So for those types of people, if you're trying to get somebody to really interact with your software, to keep going after it, to become a better user of that software, you want to activate on competence. And in the book, Marketing to Mindstates, in the appendix, there's actually, it'll tell you specifically around competence. I'm going to pull something up for you real quick, if you just give me a second, and look for some language for you. But what you want to do is, in your communications on your software, I'm doing this ad lib or off the top of my head, help them believe that building internal excellence will help them become more proficient and qualified so that they can take an action. So you have to confirm that it's through their excellence, it's through their perseverance, that by using this software, they're going to be more capable to receive the benefits of the software. They're going to want to have a desire to explore, to become more skilled in this passion. So you have to talk about how this software will allow them to explore their own passions or explore capabilities on their own, because somebody who desires greater competence wants the desire to actually be able to explore. So it's through our exploration that we become more masters or more competent. So let them set and measure metrics inside that software or inside that experience. Is also be pretty important to get them to desire to interact with that software a little bit more. So I didn't tell you about that stuff. I'm totally happy to sit down with you for like 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, tell you a little bit more specifically, or in the back of the appendix of my book, it'll tell you a little bit more about how to engage somebody who's in that. It's called the optimistic competence mind state. So optimistic competence mind state is the one you want to go for. Okay.
Okay, saw a thumb go up a second ago, and we have another question in the chat.
I do. Slogans versus pictures. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is picture. If you're going to evoke emotional response, pictures are your number one thing you should go with. Now, you may not be able to do that. I totally get it. There's only so much you can do on a tweet or whatever. Pictures, number one, neurologically work better than copy. If you can do pictures and copy, great, but only if that copy is not adding so much to the picture that people look away. So slogans are actually, honestly, from a behavioral science perspective, not oftentimes very useful, because slogans inherently are trying to make something funny or engaging, but you lose meaning. So if you're going to do a slogan, it has to be crystal clear what that slogan means. Because if you're trying to be, a lot of marketers, they make these slogans cheeky, they make them kind of funny. But what's funny to an 18-year-old copywriter or a 22-year-old copywriter is not funny, or they don't get the context if you're 45 or 50. So be careful with slogans. But pictures first, to show people in that moment of control. If you can show people feeling confident, knowing that they are in control of this environment in some way, the better. If you're familiar, this is a terrible example probably, Jeb, but if you watch the Avengers movies, and it's probably an Iron Man, but there's moments where Iron Man, he has this, he's kind of looking in the air, and he's moving elements around. He's in his kind of room. That shows complexity, and this guy is moving things. He's taking control of the complexity in the room. Visual images like that evoke a sense that this person's in control. And if I can show somebody in control, that's how I desire to feel. That's my hero within. I also want to have that control. So that picture, that movement of somebody taking control would evoke that emotional response that you're looking for.
Great, thanks, Will. And then did I see a thumb go up a couple of minutes ago? Did somebody want to share an example or a question?
Not seeing anything.
Hey guys, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is David Ramos from the city of Chicago. We're the third largest city in the nation with 3.5 million residents with over 234 square miles of road that we need to cover. One of the things that comes to mind in regards to emergency management, and by the way, I'm the deputy director for the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications. When it comes to security, empowerment, and engagement, one of the things that sticks out to me is when we do press conferences in regards to severe weather, whether it's heat waves or polar vortex that we get quite often here in the city. We get frigid temperatures. So the communication is obviously the key to what we try to do with the residents in the city. We have a press conference and we have several members of the city departments. We have 44 city departments and 5 sister agencies. So we have Chicago Police Department, Fire Department, Public Health. We even have animal care and control because obviously we love our pets, right? They're part of our family. So we have to kind of keep an eye on their paws or when they're outside, as long as we are. We get frostbitten, but they also receive the same kind of impacts when it comes to the severe weather. So obviously the security part is something that we stand united together to ensure and to, obviously to articulate to the general public what it is that it's coming their way. Not everybody's watching the news, not everyone is listening to the radio, and obviously it's word of mouth, and we have to now get used to Facebook and other social media aspects to get the words out about the inclement weather that's approaching the city of Chicago. But with that being said, we have our security force at the press conference held there with our mayor of the city. And of course, we communicate as to what it is that's approaching. And then of course, we try to provide them that empowerment by giving them examples about having a go bag, maybe a blanket, even something simple as an extra battery in case your phone dies out and you're stranded because you lost, you didn't have enough gas in your car. Whatever the case may be, we try to provide them some tools that would be good for them to remember as they're going out, whether it's to the store, checking on loved ones, little tips to remind those who are in apartment buildings about the city ordinance with regards to the temperatures of what it should be when it's cold out, or even when it's warm out. Obviously, again, as we talk about, spring, summer, and with the heat waves and the frigid temperatures, but we have ordinances that are in place. We provide that information to the general public so that they remember this information. So of course, if they are in violation of one of the municipal codes, they can always call our non-emergency number, which is 311 here in the city of Chicago. So, and finally, the engagement of interacting with our NGOs, our partners there with the Salvation Army and the Red Cross sometimes are in place. They assist us in the event of something as maybe a fire, an apartment fire. I mean, you got displaced residents, where are they going to go? And the message is always to inform them that the city of Chicago is always ready. We're here for you. We're just a phone call away. And of course, we always have our 44 city departments with inspectors, public safety folks ready at the helm in the event something happens where we can respond at a reasonable time. So I'm hoping that some of that emergency management information will kind of help those who are on with regards to security, empowerment, and of course, engagement with the community.
Hey, David, I love that. Let me ask you a question real quick. The one thing that came to mind, which you might, I don't know if you struggle with this or not, but it's getting people to be proactive so that they're prepared long before the storms come or long before these things come. Do you find that is a big issue with, like, yeah, you get the information out, but then they only have the 2 days to prepare. And then, most people can't prepare. Do you find that, you're struggling a bit with trying to get somebody to prepare for something that may be weeks, months, or even possibly years away?
Well, again, with 3.5 million residents, we try to reach everyone. And so that includes the homeless population. So we also have to be cognizant about them. Those who are living under the L tracks or the viaducts, bridges, anywhere where they call themselves home. So again, to try to get that message out to them, we have a department here in the city called Department of Family and Support Services, which of course deals with those homeless issues. And of course, they try to go out early on, especially when we know that there's frigid temperatures that are coming, to one, ensure that they're okay. Two, if they need any assistance. Three, we collaborate with the Salvation Army, Greater Chicago, and we go out and assist them with either some jackets, some gloves, some extra items to try to help them, and even food. So to your point there, Will, about getting the message out, we try to do that in advance when we know things are happening here. We have a 24-hour operations center. It's manned with several smart, intelligent individuals that are constantly watching the weather and keeping an eye on what's taking place, not just here in the city of Chicago, but throughout our county. Our county, as you know, is the second largest county in the nation, with LA County being number one. So there's a lot of collaboration and communication, and most importantly, it's the cooperation of other entities.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, David, that was awesome. For any of you out there, something like something you said, David, that kind of struck me was this idea of, the proactive nature of trying to prepare for something that is inevitable, but you don't see it. Like, when you see a storm out, I'm from the deep South, right? So I'm here in Dallas, but my wife's from deep South Louisiana. And you see these storms coming in and they're days away, but we can't get people to get ready for a hurricane until it's too late. They go to the Home Depot, the boards are all bought up, there's no nails, nobody evacuates. And this fear of, or it's this idea of, how do you get somebody who knows that there's potential threat to actually go and seek services? And if you guys are struggling with that, and it's something, it didn't sound like it's a huge struggle for you, Dave, but for those of you there's this concept called present tense bias or hyperbolic discounting. But this thing is that we tend to act on the immediate versus things that are in the future. Why? Because they're more visceral. Like when the hurricane's a day away, I know it's there. The wind comes, you see the storms, but by then it's too late. When it's out near Africa, or the fronts are coming in through the Caribbean, people don't see that as a threat. And the way to get around that, if any of you guys are struggling with this, is you have to bring the threat and the actual losses to that is going to happen to the future in the present day. And that's not necessarily saying that's easy, but there's creative ways to do that. One of the famous ones comes from some studies that show, and this from healthcare, is that when you can show younger people, because a lot of times younger people, they don't save for retirement, they eat whatever they want to, they don't think they're going to die, right? So when you ask them to save for retirement, when you ask them to eat healthier, to see their doctors more often, people just don't do it until it's sometimes too late to get that checkup for cancer or whatever. So what you have to do is showcase them in the future. And there's apps out there, you might have even seen them, where they can age your face. And what a lot of technology out there is trying to age people so they can envision themselves in the future in that state where they're under a lot of stress, they didn't take action, or that they show them that in the future, they took action and they have less stress. And so, not that you're saying that was an issue, David, but if you guys can somehow bring the future possibility to life, to the specific person, you can't just say 10,000 people will be without food or whatever. It has to be trying to be specific to them. Do you realize that if you don't take action, this in the future, your home will be influenced, or your life will be influenced negatively? And showing that negative impact in a very visceral way can get somebody who otherwise would see that as in the future, I'll deal with that in the future, to something they should do now. So thanks for bringing that up, because I can imagine that's a constant battle of getting people prepared for something in the future, but then the day-to-day struggles you have every single day of acting towards today. And unfortunately for you, it's one of the hardest biases to overcome, are people's desire, like, I'll take care of that in the future. So thank you very much for sharing that. So Adam, I know we're pretty much out of time. I will hand it over to you to take it kind of to the next, or to close out the day for us.
Sounds good. Thanks, Will. Thanks everybody for participating in this session. Hope you learned a few things about how to use behavioral science in your communications. As Will mentioned, we'd be happy to continue the conversation with you. We put our contact information here. You can also follow us on our guidehouse.com/resilience website, where you can find the latest thought leadership that we are producing around this topic. So again, thank you, appreciate your time. And with that, I'll pass it over to Lauren to close us out.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks to all of you over at Guidehouse for sponsoring the session, and thanks to our panel for sharing all of your expertise. I think this was a really useful session for everyone. Everybody in the audience, thanks so much for your participation, and this webinar will be available on NEMA YouTube channel, NEMA for You, in a couple of days. Keep an eye on your inbox. More information will be available for sessions later this week. Take care, stay well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.